When I was 9 years old, I fell into the old village well. Everyone thought I had died, but they found me sitting on the edge of the well, staring up at the sky, my clothes completely dry. The water behind me calm, as if nothing had fallen into it. They called it a miracle and prayed in thanks to the Lord. But my mother looked at me for a long time, then pulled me home without saying a word. From that day on, I began to see what others could not. I saw my grandfather sitting in his worn chair, though he had died before I was born. He would smile at me whenever I passed by. I saw a white-clad woman emerge from the river on nights of the full moon, combing her long hair with a comb made of mist. I would touch one flower, and it would wither. Touch another, and it would bloom, without knowing how or why. When I was 12, a strange man came to our small cottage. He was tall, black-eyed, wearing a worn cloak and carrying an olive-wood staff. He spoke with my mother for a long time while I listened from behind the door. He said to her, "The boy is not yours alone. He has another path." My mother wept, but she did not object. In the morning, I walked behind the man without looking back. He led me deep into the cedar forest, where no one in the village dared to go. We walked for days, sleeping in caves and eating what the earth gave us. His name was Orso, and he rarely spoke. But one night, as we sat by a small fire, he said, "The forest hears everything. It is the one that chose you, not I. I am only a messenger." I asked him, "Where are you taking me?" He replied, "To where you were before you were born." After 7 days, we reached a deep valley. In its center stood an old stone tower with no doors and no windows. Orso laughed at my confusion, placed his hand on the wall, and a large stone shifted aside as if floating in the air. We entered. The inside of the tower was larger than it appeared from the outside, filled with books, copper vessels, and colored candles. In the far corner sat an old woman, her face lined with deep wrinkles, her eyes blue like the winter sky. "At last, you have come, little one," she said. She did not ask my name, nor did she tell me hers. She only said, "I will teach you what I learned 500 years ago. But remember, a wizard does not create miracles. He only remembers how things were before they were corrupted." I remained in that tower for 10 full years. In the first year, I learned the true names of things, the language of the wind as it passes through branches, the language of fire as it consumes wood, the language of stone as it sleeps in the earth's depths. In the second year, the old woman taught me how to distinguish healing herbs from deadly ones, how to dry and mix them, and how to store them in clay jars that did not allow time to enter. In the third year, I began reading the ancient books, handwritten on parchment in a language unlike that of humans. In the fifth year, what I had feared happened. The old woman died. She was sitting in her usual corner, staring silently into the fire. Then she closed her eyes, and her head tilted to one side. I did not dare approach her at first. I sat waiting for her to move, but she did not. I remained beside her for 3 days, neither eating nor sleeping, until I knew she would not return. On the third night, I took her cold hand and kissed it, then walked to the tower wall and whispered, "Open." It opened. I stepped into the world at 22, a wizard who knew the secrets of nature, but nothing of people. I returned to my old village and found it changed. My mother's cottage had collapsed, and she herself had died 5 years earlier. I stood before her grave in the small village cemetery and felt something press against my chest, but I could not cry. I had forgotten how. I could not stay, so I left. I wandered through villages and cities, selling my herbal mixtures in markets, reading fortunes for those who asked, and healing the sick when I could. In a small village near the Seine, church guards stopped me and asked for my papers. I had none. They said I was suspicious. They had seen me speaking to a crow perched on my shoulder. They imprisoned me for 3 days in a dark cellar. On the third night, I whispered to the iron bars, and they opened as if made of spider silk. I escaped under the moonlight. I heard their shouts behind me, but I did not look back. In the city of Toulouse, I met a woman named Isabelle. She worked spinning wool, her eyes green and her hair red as fire. She loved me because I was different. I loved her because she was the first to look at me as a man, not a wizard. I stayed with her for a year, nearly forgetting who I was. But one night, I awoke to an inner voice saying, "She will die if you remain." In the morning, I left the city without farewell, leaving a piece of my heart behind. I continued alone. In the year 1347, I was in Marseille when the Black Death arrived aboard Italian ships. I saw people die in the streets like flies. I saw mothers abandon their children in fear of death. I saw the wealthy burn in their homes because no one dared open the doors. I tried to heal, but the disease was stronger than my herbs. One night, standing in the empty square, I raised my hands to the sky and cried, "Why do you leave me powerless?" No one answered. But the next day, as I passed a deserted church, I heard faint weeping. Inside, I found a little girl no older than 5, sitting beside the bodies of her mother and father. She looked at me with wide eyes and asked, "Will you take me too?" I took her with me. I named her Marie and raised her as my mother had raised me. She walked beside me through the roads of Europe for 10 years, learning what I knew and teaching me what I had forgotten. How to laugh again, how to rejoice in a sunset, how to forget fear for a moment. But I knew it would not last. A wizard cannot live with anyone forever. In 1357, in a small village in the Alps, she had the dream. One morning she awoke and said, "I saw a stone tower in a deep valley, and an old woman sitting in the corner looking at me." I knew then that her time had come. I bid her farewell at the edge of the forest and gave her a brass ring that had belonged to the old woman who taught me. She walked toward the forest without looking back. I returned to the road alone. I grew older, my hair turned white, my back weakened. But I did not die. I passed through the same village every 50 years, finding the houses changed and the names different, yet the hills remained, and the river still flowed as it always had. The last time I passed through that village, I was 87 years old, at least in this body. I sat beneath the old oak tree where I had played as a child and looked at the sky. A small boy approached me, wide-eyed, black-haired. He stared at me for a long moment, then asked, "Sir, are you the wizard people speak of?" I smiled. "And what do they say about me?" "They say you never die, that you appear once each generation, and that you know the true names of things." I reached out and touched his hair, feeling something ancient stir in my veins. "And what do you want from the wizard?" I asked. He looked at me with the seriousness of children and said, "I want to know why I have no shadow." I looked behind him and saw the ground empty of his shadow. I looked into his eyes and saw myself 80 years earlier. I smiled. "Come with me, little one," I said. "I have much to tell you." We stood together and walked toward the forest. The sun was setting behind us, and I knew that one day I would return to this village again, in another body, to begin the story from the beginning.